Nicole from Growing into Baby and welcome to my channel. This is going to be our last little craft tutorial for this year, 2024, and I want to show you three things that you can make now for a gift for your friends and family. So these are some pretty short sewing projects mostly. They take roughly 10 minutes to make, so they are super quick and easy, and you can make them mostly from scrap materials that you probably have around if you're a crafter already in your house. So let's just get started right away. Now the first thing we're gonna make today is a cute little gingerbread house ornament for our tree. You need some felt. I've just got this little sheet and I'm just gonna freehand draw a house on that. You can Google it, gingerbread house, and just get some ideas and choose what kind of style you want. I went with a bit of a mansion-y, a little bit of a larger frontage, but you can just do a classic house as well if you want. And just draw that on your felt freehand, or you can copy it and print it out if you want. This is the easiest though. Once you're done, just fold it over so you can cut out two at once. That makes it much easier. Otherwise, just use the first one you cut out as a stencil for drawing the second one. Once we're done with that, we are going to need some needles and some thread. You can use whatever you like. This is kind of like an embroidery floss, but not quite. I think this one is for darning. I got it in a set with a lot of other stuff, so I'm not sure. Just get a needle that fits the size, thread it and add a little knot to the end. We are going to first blanket stitch around our whole ornament. Make sure that knot is nice and tight so it doesn't come apart. Here we go. Now next we're going to use a little bit of yarn in a similar color, or you can use the string or thread you use to sew. And we're going to make a little hanger so you can put it up on your Christmas tree. Just take a small amount, put a knot in it, and just pop it inside the top of the house, and we will secure it while we sew. Now to our blanket stitch. First of all, we're going to secure that knot on the inside, so we only need to put our needle through one layer of the felt. And then we're going to get to our knot. My thread is a bit long, so I'm going to cut off a tiny bit and then put it onto the inside so it is basically invisible and nice and neat. And then we're gonna put in another stitch. The next one is a little bit further apart. And then the next stitch goes here, and we're gonna pull that almost all the way through, and then loop our needle back through this little loop and pick it up. And there's your blanket stitch. Oh, stuck there for a little bit, and there is your blanket stitch. Now this one is not super straight, but we're going to pick that up with the very last stitch we make to close it off. Now let's continue this make sure the gaps are fairly even when you go around, and we'll continue this all around the whole, almost the whole gingerbread house. We will need a little bit of a gap at the bottom, so just keep that in mind. Here we go. Now this is my last stitch so far, and there you can see there's a little bit of a gap at the bottom where our stuffing will go in. Next I chose to decorate it. Now this is entirely up to you, whatever you want to do. I decided to give it a little outline and some shingles and a door and some other decorations, but again, this is entirely up to you. You can do this however you want. That's the beauty of making something by hand. You can do whatever you like. Once you're done with your gingerbread design, it is time to stuff our ornament to give it a little bit of body. You can leave this out, this is absolutely fine, but it does make it look a little bit better. I actually use this stuffing out of a pillow. You can buy polyfill, but you can always get lovely, very cheap pillows at op shops, like cushions. I mean, not pillows where people sleep on necessarily, but cushions that would be on couches and stuff like that, and they have great fill in them, and it's quite cheap compared to a bag of polyfill, so just keep that in mind. Don't overstuff it. We don't want it to be round and bulging, just a little bit of body. And then once you're done, you finish up the bottom hole as well. Again, tuck your knot in if you have to use new thread like I did because I ran out, and then just blanket stitch the rest of the way around. Now I have to tell you, I am very impatient. I am not someone who uses hand sewing a lot. If I can do it with a machine, I will. So this was well, I was very impatiently doing this, to be honest, because I just don't like hand stitching that much, but it is actually quite relaxing if you take your time and just do it nice and neatly, not as unneatly like me. Now with the last one, we want to pick up that first stitch like that and just straighten it out a bit. And to secure, what I did is I just made a few I just threaded my thread under these stitches a little bit backwards and forwards, and that's really all you need. This is not something that gets a lot of wear and tear, so it should just stay. And this is our finished, beautiful gingerbread house. Next we are making our really fun hexagonal coasters, and I have this sewing pattern from a website called Canoe Creations. I have used this many times and I really love it because it uses up scraps. So sometimes when I have a lot of scraps, clogging up my basket, I just sit down for a little bit, and you can see I cut out loads and loads of those tiny pieces, and I try to squeeze out as much as possible of the scraps that I can. Again, this pattern is really great for it because it just uses small pieces. Now what we also need is a little bit of batting or wadding. I had some cotton wadding left over from other projects. Again, I'm trying to use up all my scraps for this. For the coaster you need a large hexagon, a small hexagon, and a small rectangle, and for the dimensions I will list them down below. However, also check out the blog where I got it from, Canoe Creations, and they have some excellent written instructions there as well if you can't follow my chaotic ones here. Now what I did is I just cut out my small pieces from scraps before. Now we are gonna cut out one large hexagon from our batting and one large hexagon from a backing fabric. You don't have to do that, you can also use a patchwork top for the back as well if you would like that. Now this is a little bit tricky. We're using our small hexagon and we are going to line up one corner of that on the right hand side with one of our rectangles. Then we are going to measure from the left hand side. We're going to measure 1/2 inch and mark that there. So this is as far as we are going to sew. We need a little bit of a gap of 1/2 inch there to finish off the coaster in the end. Now we're gonna stitch that with our machine from the marking, and we're using a 1/4 inch sewing seam allowance, which is about 1/2 centimeter. Now don't forget to back stitch the front, the start and the ends to make sure they are nice and secure. Now we're gonna stitch that down there, and that is the first rectangle we're attaching to our quilted top, or patchwork top more to the point. You can see this is lovely. Now finger press, you can absolutely go ahead and press this with an iron. I am just a little bit lazy sometimes, so I will do this in the end. Now next we are going to take our ruler. Now do this on the table. I am working on my desk here. It is very small there. And we are going to just cut off that little corner that is sticking over. Now line it up with the hexagon in the middle, make a straight line, continue the line of the hexagon, mark that up and just cut it off. Now you can see we got a nice straight line. This is attached with a little gap, and this just follows the line of the hexagon. Now we're going to turn it towards the left, and we're going to get our next rectangle, and that you line that up again with this edge of the hexagon and the edge that we just cut off of our first rectangle. And then we're gonna, this time there's no gaps that need to be kept, we just sew it down all the way. Finger press that again, or press it with an iron if you have your iron set up. That is definitely the way to go. And then again we are going to use a ruler, and we're going to line up our next hexagon edge with the edge that we've just sewn, and cut off the excess there to make it nice and neat. Now we are going to repeat that for the next 3 rectangles as well. Just line them up, sew them down, cut off the excess, and then do that again with the other 2. Now we're at our last rectangle, so we need to do something a little bit different. We fold over that first rectangle that we attached, and then we lie down our last rectangle and attach it as we have before. Just be mindful to fold back that first rectangle. There should be enough of a gap. We left ½ an inch, so that should be plenty to stitch down that last rectangle nicely, just like all the other ones. Just cutting off my thread here. Okay, and then we are going to unfold this, finger press it, and then you have to fold over that first rectangle so you can again continue the line of the hexagon and just cut off that excess there from the piece that we have just attached. And now for the last little bit that's still not attached, that's going to be easy peasy as well. We are just going to straighten that up and line it up with the edge that we've just cut, and then sew that down until it meets with the bit that we've already attached to the hexagon in the first step. Apologies, my camera did not want to focus on all the close-ups here, but I think you can see it okay. And now all of our rectangles have been attached to our small hexagon in the middle of the coaster. There we have it. That's the first step finished. Next we're going to give it a good press. I am just using my craft iron here because I'm at my desk and there isn't a lot of space to get the big iron out, so I just thought quickly for a small project this is perfectly fine. Make sure all the seams are nice and flat. That's looking lovely. So next we are going to cut off those little corners that make it look like a star. We're just going to basically trace the line of the outside of all of our rectangles, and that'll make it into a beautiful little hexagon as well. Perfect. Now neaten up the back if you haven't yet cut off your threads. It makes it nice and lovely. I know nobody's gonna see it, but still it is a good step to take. Alright, next we're gonna layer our bits. Now with right sides together, the big hexagon and the one that we've just patched worked. And then the next layer is our wadding. So make sure the right sides of our fabrics match and then put the wadding on top of one of the other ones. And now to the sewing. Unfortunately my camera cut out here at some point, so just what you need to do is you need to sew around 5 edges of our hexagon Just make sure you backstitch at the start and at the end, and that's pretty straightforward. We need to leave one of the edges open so we can turn it later. Now, as I said, my camera cut out. Once you are done sewing it, you need to trim off the corners and then you turn it inside out. I like using a chopstick to poke out the corners so they don't get damaged. Next, we are going to fold in the open edges about 1/4 inch or 1/2 centimeter, and I like using some clips to hold that in place because it's a little bit slippery sometimes. Just hold that and then clip it down so it doesn't go anywhere. Continue with the rest of this edge. Now, once you're done, we're going to top stitch around the outside. I like to set my machine to a 3mm stitch length for top stitching, and I do it about an eighth. I like to do it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now I'm gonna start with this open edge. Don't forget to backstitch at the start and at the end. And then just take your time and turn it once you get to the corner. And our beautiful coaster is finished. Now you can give this another press now once you're done. It is such a nice, fun little project. It uses up all your scraps, and it is actually a really great gift to get a little set of those. I mean, everybody needs coasters, right? Now for our last gift, we're going to make some scrunchies. Again, these are super easy and super fast to make. You need some fabric. For scrunchies you need some long strips of fabric, so the minimum I use is usually about 20 inches or 50 centimeters. I'm just straightening my fabric up here because my edge is a little bit wild. So it needs to be between 20 and 24 inches long, I find is the best, so between 50 and 60 centimeters. That is great. As you can see, I'm using the whole width of this fabric. I folded it in half, and I'm gonna make 2 scrunchies out of that folded in half. And the width of our scrunchies should be about 4.5 inches. So I'm using my handy dandy quilting ruler here because it is exactly 4.5 inches wide. And we're just gonna cut that long strip of our fabric. Next we're gonna cut off the selvage, and then, as I said, I doubled up my fabric here, so I'm gonna cut it in half as well, and then I can make 2 scrunchies out of that. Now the next thing we are going to need is elastic. So I am using this natural latex elastic because I still have some of that. You can use any. This one is 3/4 of an inch wide. I think up to 1/2 inch is great, not any thicker than that, but not a lot slimmer either. We're going to cut off 8 inches for our scrunchie. If you have a little bit less, I think down to 7 is okay. Less than 7 is not great, but this is around between 7 and 8. If you only have scraps, will be good. Now we're going to sew our scrunchie. Basically, we're just going to make a long tube. We're going to fold our fabric in half, right sides together. And then we want to leave a gap at the start of this, so about 1.5 inches, which is about 3 centimeters, I think. The smaller you make the gap, the more difficult it will be to finish it at the end, so make sure you do leave a decent gap at the start and at the end as well. I'm just gonna pin or clip my fabric together to make it a little bit easier. And then I'm also gonna measure the 1.5 inches or 3 centimeters at the end to make sure I leave that open as well. And now we're gonna sew between the 2 marks we've just made. And I am again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance or 1/2 centimeter, and we're gonna backstitch at the start and at the end as well. This is pretty straightforward. It's just one straight line. Don't forget to stop at your mark. Do not sew all the way down, because then you can't finish your scrunchies. Here we go. That's all done. Now I'm just gonna cut off the excess thread to make it nice and neat. And next we are going to turn our scrunchie inside out. Now this should be fairly easy, depending on the fabric you use. I'm using a lawn, which is quite thin. If you're using drill, it might be a little bit grippy, but that's okay. I'm always using my trusty chopstick that actually lives in my sewing kit and not in the kitchen anymore, and that makes it super easy to turn the scrunchie. Now straighten it out and make sure it is not twisted, and then we are going to match up the ends of the scrunchie like this. And we want to be fairly accurate here. Makes it easier to sew, so I'm gonna just pin those in place. You do not have to pin the whole way like I do. You can just eyeball it. I was just doing that to make it extra neat and tidy. And now we're going to sew that short edge shut, again with a 1/4 inch seam allowance for the whole thing. Just be mindful and try and pull those pins out before you sew over them, just in case. And again, apologies, my camera just decided my fingers are more interesting than what I'm sewing for some reason. And take your time when you do this, and take it nice and slow, because you have to move that fabric around quite a lot and straighten it out and pull it a little bit into shape to make sure it's nice and straight. You can see I'm just stopping here and there, take my pins out and straighten everything up. And don't forget to backstitch. Now that already looks pretty good. Let's just cut off some of that excess thread. Next we're going to insert our elastic in through that hole. You can use a bodkin, I like using that, but today I'm using a safety pin because most people will have one of those lying around somewhere in the house. You just attach it to one end of the elastic and just thread it in through the whole scrunchie. Now once you've gotten a little bit in and pulled it backwards, make sure you secure the end of your elastic so it doesn't just disappear. Now I'm using a clip, you can just hold onto it if you want, or you can use a pin as well. Just be gentle and alright, and there we are through. We have those 2 ends there, and now we are going to overlap them by roughly 1/2 inch. And we're gonna sew them together. Now I'm using a zigzag stitch for this. And this does not have to be neat, you just have to shove it under a little bit and it'll be fine. Nobody's gonna see this, we just want to make sure that it sticks together, and the zigzag stitch is great for that. Just try and get the elastic lengthways under your sewing machine. It usually tries to escape, but just put your sewing foot down and it'll hold it in place, and then stitch forwards and backwards over the elastic 1 or 2 times and it'll be all secured. Now I've made a few of those, as I said before. I have never had any come apart, so this should be perfectly fine. There we go. Now make sure you set your sewing machine back to your straight stitch right away. Again, I have also done that a few times, that I started sewing them with zigzag when I was closing it. Now we are going to fold the open edges of our gap together. We fold them in about 1/4 inch, and then I'm just going to put 1 clip in the middle, but you can put as many clips or pins in as you need, and we are just going to sew that edge closed about 1/8 of an inch or less away from the edge. Now you need to pull it in to shape a little bit, because it might be, because of the elastic, it might be a little bit curled up, but that's okay. You can just pull that nice and gently. Take your time, stop in between, make sure everything is tucked in nicely, and you can have a nice neat edge there. And there we have our scrunchie. Now just cut off that little bit of thread we still have on there. And there we are, finished. Very good. Now you've got your scrunchie. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. Let's have another look at the gorgeous things we've made. This cute little decoration. You could also write the year in the back. I was just thinking of doing that, and I'll write all my family members' names on it as well, and that'll become a little bit of a thing that we put up every year on our tree. Now coasters, these are amazing, and don't forget I put the link to the blog where I got this tutorial from down below in the description, so you can check them out as well. These are my favorite. This pattern I love so much because you can, it's just such a scrap buster. You can make it out of nothing basically. And last but not least, our scrunchies. I have made so many of those over the years. They're so quick and easy, and you really don't need that much fabric, and they are super cute and fun to give to friends as well. So I really hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know down below in the comments which one of those you made, and I would absolutely love to know. And send me some pictures as well if you can. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Growing in Suburbia if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I'll see you one more time this year next week for a little bit of a catch up, and then I'm gonna take a break for a week, and then we're gonna start big in January with our crafting journey again. All right, have a lovely Christmas, and I'll see you soon. Bye.